Hello again, and I am Kenny Fikes, host of iKnowMedia's Roundtable, where we continue to bring you conscientious clarity through both empirical experience along with reasoned application and analysis. Around the room, please.
Go, Jayshree.
Oh, my next. Hello, my name is Jayshree Ellis, although those who know and love me call me Jay. I am a mother of three. I am an obstetrician gynecologist and a disability advocate, and I'm ready to see some change in our country.
I'm Elisa Simmons. I'm a Montessori guide in Texas, and like Jay, I'm ready to get the ball changed.
Michael Malabsky. I am a pediatrician in Denver, Colorado, father of 7, grandfather now of 2, and I am privileged and humbled and grateful to be part of this group and part of the conversation.
All right, so today our topic of discussion is going to be about a video that Elisa shared with me and suggested that we talk about today, and that's what we're doing.
Wants to violate a 15-year-old.
No, I'm asking a question. She's a
She
child.
bumped into me when I
So
was
if she did something wrong, she needs to apologize. If she did
This
something
ignorant
wrong,
woman
If
bumped
she
into
didn't
a
apologize,
15-year-old,
Correct?
and you're on camera.
Okay.
You're feeling
Go,
threatened.
Okay, well, go in.
No, Mom.
I got this.
You're blocking me from getting
No,
my
girl,
No, we
no,
weren't. No, we weren't. No, we weren't. You're ignorant.
Go ahead, call them.
No, we will, but you're not going to sit there and violate a 15-year-old.
She's ignorant.
Do it, bitch. Do it.
Go ahead.
Do it. I want you to
Call
do
the
something.
police.
She's very ignorant.
Dumbass bitch. Yeah, I said it. You say something, I'll beat your white ass too. Yeah, oh, I
You-
will. Do something. Please put your
Do
motherfucking
something.
hands up.
Do something.
Please.
Who the fuck do you think you guys
Who
are?
do you
Who
think
do you?
you are?
Your wife think you are.
You calling her name?
yeah,
She
you-
did nothing to
Yeah,
you.
I
she
didn't.
apologize.
I
Go
didn't.
in, Kayla. God, dog,
No, you
both of
didn't.
y'all over there.
You're very racist and ignorant.
You're racist because you're calling
No,
her
you
name.
bumped it. She bumped into me.
Why would you bump into
You
her?
cannot just
Why
walk
would
around
you
calling
bump her?
white
Why
people
would you bump her?
racist. This is not that
Why
type
would
of
you
world.
bump her?
White people
Why
are
would you
racist.
bump her?
No one's
Why
racist.
would you bump her?
I
Why
care
did you
about
say
you.
sorry?
I care
Why
about
did you say
you,
sorry?
and I'm sorry if you've
Why
had an
did you say
incident
sorry?
that has made
If you
someone
bumped
make
into
you
her,
feel
why
like
did you
that.
say sorry?
No one is racist.
If you didn't do
I'm
anything, why
sorry
would
if
you
you
do that?
had something like that happen.
Ignorant. Ignorant.
Okay.
Very. Mom, watch.
Get the fuck away from me!
You gonna get on her face.
You better get on my fucking face
Right now, get away.
Get the fuck away!
Get the fuck
Get
back.
away. Get the fuck away.
Are you gonna hit? You gonna shoot me?
Get the fuck away.
Oh!
Get away. Call the cops right now. Call them.
Oh!
Call the cops.
Get the fuck away.
Call the cops.
Get away.
She got the gun on me.
Call
He
them
hit me
now.
with the car. Call them. I'm telling. Get the
Call the cops.
Get the license plate.
Get.
Get the license plate now. Cause you were never about to hit me with the damn
Don't
car.
you
about
fucking
to hit
know.
me with the car?
fucking
Oh,
know.
both of y'all put the guns on me.
Yeah.
Okay? Call Richard back up to the police. Call Richard back up here now.
I got it.
Don't you fucking jump behind my
No,
car.
I ain't jumping on your car. What
Don't you fucking jump.
Mom, stop moving.
Stop,
Mom.
Get the fuck back! Back the fuck up! No, you can't fucking leave.
You got all this on video? Yes.
Call the police. No.
Mom, stop walking.
Hello, police. Call the police. Can you come back to some police? Call the police. You walking.
They pulled the gun out on her.
These white people, they're so racist. They pulled a gun on my mama, both of them. It was a white lady and a white man.
Yeah, I got it.
Yes.
With that said, I think in our last session, when I said one of those overused statements, "I'm not a doctor," it got some laughs. And so here's another overused one. There's a lot to unpack here, a lot. So we won't be feeble and afraid of it. We'll attack it head on in the same way we've done before. But what I think I'd like to try is to talk about what bad people do, or just mention what bad people do, and then maybe go around the horn on maybe 4 different positions and talk about what we believe about those positions, or 3 positions, and then talk about that video in stages, and then maybe summarize it at the end, because we could all write a treatise on the entire thing if we were allowed to just go at it. With that said, I believe that bad people, however you want to describe it, maybe you don't like the word bad, but people without good intentions, selfish, people who like drama, will also, and people who don't want to be accountable, will always do bad things. And there are examples that I hope don't offend anyone. I'll use an example of, say, a black person who gets fired from a job because he or she is late every day. And they say, oh, it's because I'm black and they were racist. Well, some people will do that, but you can't hold that up as really the example, because people will do that. Or I'll use an example like, it's not misogynistic, but just like I'm saying with black people, like I've heard of scenarios and seen scenarios where women will cry foul, like this man hit me, or this man, abused me in some way, when he really didn't, because she was scorned. But we don't want to use those examples. One who corrected a guy who recently was found innocent. And so people will do things like that, or white folks who have police on black people just because they're upset in that privilege, right? That is systemic, so it's not an exact apples to apples comparison, but that's my introduction, is that we hate when people use bad examples to overlay it on everyone else. So with that said, another thing for me is, the idea of not airing dirty laundry. I have some specific opinions about this video that I saw that I would rather pull this woman aside and talk to her about, versus airing that dirty laundry and describing it in some ways that might be called fabulous or otherwise. So that's difficult for me to watch, and difficult for me to say openly as a black man, outside airing dirty laundry, particularly in this environment, because we don't want to give people fodder for their cannons and say, I told you so. And so because it's hard, we'll try to unpack it a little bit at a time. So we just go around the horn and talk about our position on guns, gun rights, the Second Amendment, what that means. And then we'll go from there to the next subject and try and unpack this thing a little bit at a time. So, Michael, why don't you start this time about what you think, what's your position on the Second Amendment, owning guns, et cetera, and not even go so far as to when they should be used, and then
Sure.
you
Well,
go ahead.
so as a disclaimer, most of you guys know Colorado is very similar to Texas in its liberal approach to guns. And so I'm going to be very, very open. You guys know I'm a pediatrician, but I also own a trampoline, I own a pit bull, and I own guns. The guns that I own happen to be shotguns because my son shoots trap. So we have a shotgun. We also enjoy going to the range. So we have a 9mm. They stay in the house. I do not have a concealed carry. I have thought about it recently, especially after Pittsburgh. I'm sure most of you guys know what I'm talking about with the anti-Semitic attack at Squirrel Hill. I thought more about having a concealed carry, but I certainly have a more liberal approach to it. I'm going to say that's also coupled by the fact that my family has a very strong relationship with Israel. In Israel, we're used to being armed, and it's seen as a normal part of life and a normal part of one's personal protection. Israel does not have the same, not even close, the same problem with people abusing and misusing gun privileges the way they are done here. So I certainly support gun ownership in a general principle. I'm going to say that I draw the line, and very similar to what Israel says, which is, there's no reason for civilians to own anything more than a handgun or a hunting rifle, that anything beyond that is unnecessary and should be reserved for military use. And that's actually what Israel does. In fact, a person who is not in the military can own only a handgun and can only own a certain amount of ammunition, and you have to be interviewed and tested every year to make sure that you're not crazy and that you have a competency in it. So I support it very much on that end. first of all, I think that we can all be unanimous in terms of the gun issue in this video. I'm pretty sure that no sane person toward the end of the video, the part where she steps out of the car with a loaded gun, I think that's where really any unpacking can end, because there's
so let's wrap up on that.
Yeah.
And go stay with the positions on guns right now. Elisa, what do you think?
You know what? I personally do not feel the need to have a gun, only because I'm very comfortable with my hands. And so having a gun in my family was never something I wanted to do in my immediate family. I will say right now, in the current climate, my husband and I have contemplated him getting a concealed weapons license, just because it is becoming a little bit more and more uncomfortable. I feel, though, I'm one of those people, I feel like the Second Amendment was written a long time ago and they did not know what we were going to have. And so for me, some people, I'm uncomfortable with them having ownership. I feel like we should follow suit with the rest of the world. And if you want to have a gun, go through the process. Go and have evaluations regularly. Don't have an arsenal at your house. To me, that is unnecessary. So if you want to have a gun, go for it. I just don't want to.
Right. I agree. And I used this before. Barack Obama in a debate with Mitt Romney at one point, and also referring to what we talked about in the last session, that two things can exist in the same space. While it is certainly true that the four founders or founding fathers had this incredible vision of what a republic could be, it's also true that some of it is antiquated. What's the relationship between Barack Obama's comment to Mitt Romney? And that is, when the Second Amendment was penned, it was talking about treason and the British and different things, so Mitt Romney was trying to say to Barack Obama that he was weak on the military. So that we had more ships in the U.S. Navy in 1890 than in 2012 or whatever. And Barack said, yeah, we also had more horses and bayonets.
Yeah.
And fewer aircraft carriers.
Yeah, so that's not a political comment, it's an analogy. So Jay, what do you think about guns?
Well, personally, I've become interested in them, personally. I mean, I grew up in New York City, where gun ownership among families wasn't that common necessarily. It wasn't a big part of the culture in the North. Coming here to Texas, over time, I met so many women who have multiple guns. Like, women here just will have something in their purse or in their car. And when I first went to a gun range, I loved it. I thought it was so empowering. I thought it was very cool on a personal level. When it comes to our constitutional rights, I look at historically what the founding fathers did, and what they were writing about was allowing citizens to be able to arm themselves against a rogue government. And so that's not why most people own guns today. I think that much like even the coronavirus and the pandemic, right? We don't have anything constitutional that tells us how to handle it. And I think when we find things like that, we have to be very intentional in figuring out what we want for our society, what will our goals be, what are our values going to be. So do we want to have guns for sport? Do we want to have guns for protection and defense? Figure that out and figure out what that's supposed to look like. And we just haven't, and we don't agree upon it. When we talk about having guns for defense, like, how much artillery do you need, right? Do you need a semi-automatic weapon? So I don't feel you do. I think you should be able to have other guns. And there are those gun collectors. They may never shoot a weapon at all, but they collect. How do we look at that? I think that we always have to be responsible, though, when it comes to a gun owner and their behavior, when it comes to their background, when it comes to their mental health. There are certain things that I think we need to really analyze about who's best to own a gun. And I love what Michael mentioned, that there is some ongoing assessment, kind of like you have to renew your driver's license every so often. Maybe the same should be true with gun ownership and licensure. Maybe there needs to be a psychological assessment to make sure that a gun owner can handle the responsibility.
Okay. I don't know if it was just me, but I heard a lot of feedback there. And so I don't know if it's possible to sort of reset your connection or not, but we might try that. As for me and my thoughts about guns, I'll keep it pretty simple. I have sort of combination of all of you guys. Actually, I hear the feedback with me as well. But I own an AR-15, and I also own a 38 with a laser on it, that only has 5 rounds for short distance and self-defense. I own them for 2 reasons. One, they're neat, they're nice to have, like a toy. And 2 is because I can. When I look around the South and I see lots of white men with ATVs and assault rifles, and guns, and concealed carries, I'm like, well, I don't have any felonies. I can afford an AR-15. I'm getting one too. And if a lot more people who look like me had them, maybe the laws wouldn't be so liberal. I think there's something to that. So, but at the same time, I enjoy my guns. I give them up in a heartbeat. If we decided as a country, everyone's got to give them back, I wouldn't fight that. So, what about conflict resolution and de-escalation? What do we feel about that? Conflict resolution and de-escalation and personal conflict. Why don't we start with you, Elisa?
I think that this is something our country could benefit hugely. In school, I had peer facilitating in 7th and 8th grade, and I still use those tools today. I think, especially when you look at this video, I think one person felt wronged, and once the apology was given, they could not stop. They couldn't say, oh, okay, I was given the apology, let's back off. They had to keep going. And I think that's a reflection of where our country is today. We begin to react. And I think we see that over everything. And so I think that in this situation, it was a really good example of taking your emotions, how we want to have these conversations without basing them on emotions, taking your emotions so far that you may not be setting a great example for your children that are with you, and you're not teaching a good example of how to de-escalate situations. And I think that as a country, we could benefit from mass education when it came to human interaction and de-escalating situations and how to take a breath.
100%.
Sounds good. Okay. Who else wants to tackle that?
I'm just going to add that I think this goes along with where a certain amount of healthy social engineering, I think, is one of those things that as a country can be one of those rudders that can start to turn the ship. You know, we talked about that idea, Kenny, of like, hey, mandatory national service is not such a crazy thing. And that forcing young people in a formative window to have to live, work, cooperate, and generate relationships with people vastly different from themselves and not be given the option to doing that, because we know not only does it benefit whatever infrastructure or military structure, but it benefits each person, is a generational shift. Just like that, installing different ideas in our school and educational philosophy, at least is 100% one of those things where, you know, if your kid goes to public school, he's going to get, just like he gets health class and sex education at 6th grade, 8th grade, and 11th grade. Well, at the same time, he's going to have to get actual classes with role playing and real feedback on conflict resolution and de-escalation and face-to-face communication. Because as a pediatric mental health practitioner, most of my time in pediatrics, I do less and less medicine and more mental health. The disconnection we're raising a disabled generation of young adults who literally are unable and don't have the knowledge and skill set that we used to take for granted. I mean, it wasn't necessary when most of us were in school because we were constantly practicing that all the time. Well, those interactions are being bled away from most kids this age, and they don't have the opportunity to practice these things. And so we have to put it back in. I agree 100%. There needs to be part of the change in educational philosophy of what our kids should be learning.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I agree. And I mean, I think that one reason it's important to do in school is that kids don't always get that at home. Or maybe at home, they, just get vastly differing ideas about conflict resolution. Some kids learn not to address conflict at all, which is not a good thing, right? We don't want people to be belligerent, but we also don't want them to be avoidant. But I think that, you know, we also need to help our community with the idea of consequential thinking, right? Because I think that that has to go into it. Learn to understand what the consequences of your actions may become, and everyone who may be impacted by those consequences, so that you can make better decisions about what to do when you find yourself in a confrontational situation.
Yeah. You know what, and Mike, Kenny, if you don't mind me adding, in
We lost her. Lisa, we can't hear you.
Lost
So,
you.
yeah. Elisa, can't hear you. All right. So when should the police be called? And did this situation hit the mark for the police to be called? Elisa, we couldn't hear you. So
no, it's okay.
Jay Cherie, why don't you start with that?
I think that the police should have been called as soon as she started banging on the car window, and as soon as she thought that she should step behind the car and stop them from leaving. I think that would have been an appropriate time to call the police for sure.
Okay. By whom?
If I were the woman in the car, her and her husband, I would have. I mean, because up until that time, I didn't see that they were physically aggressive at all. And if what I saw was that they were trying to leave the situation, they were in their car and he was trying to back up, and this woman stepped behind the car to stop them. And prior to that, she was verbally, I mean, she threatened them verbally.
Yeah.
And she was racist in her words.
Yeah. So Michael, did this meet, when should the police be called, and did it hit the mark? When?
I agree with Jay Cherie, because, you know, as if anything that I've learned in this process from being part of this group and being, you know, listening in on the national conversation, the whole idea of when to call the police and using the police has really, I wasn't as tuned into the fact that that can be the act that takes someone's life. That was, for instance, in George Floyd, you know, for passing a fake $20 bill, that was what ended his life. And so, yeah, I think that people have to be way more thoughtful, but I agree that when the people who were trying to leave the scene peaceably were being prevented from doing so in an aggressive way, that's when you need mediation in the process, or it leaves the ability of the group to resolve the situation. I think before the gun was drawn, in that sense.
Yes.
So Lisa, you're back?
Yes.
Audio sounds like, so you want to add what you wanted to add before, and then kind of talk about when the
yeah, sure. And then I'll well, I was going to point out that the reason in my classroom we have 6 peacekeepers, and one of our classroom rules is to pay attention to your effect on the world. And we regularly go through what's our negative effect and what's our positive effect on the world. And the reason we do that is because the generation of parents, we've lost that as how to instill that. And so it was just tying in with the ideal of teaching that in school, to actually think about how your behavior affects other people, but also the power that you have. I can choose to walk away from a situation and not react. If I give them my power, then they're in control of me. And you don't want people to be in control of you. As far as when the video goes, when to call the police, this is actually the when to call the police is actually why this video became a conversation for me over the last few weeks, last week. It was because I had to explain to someone who's trying to figure out how to become an ally about how dangerous words are. When that woman hit their car, and as they were backing out and she was hitting their car, to me, they were in a safe location. They're inside their car. That woman had no weapon to break their windows. They should have simply stopped and made a conscious decision to call the police and say, there is a mom and a daughter who are upset with me and aren't letting me leave a parking lot. I think that it would have been a wise decision to purposely leave out the mother and daughter's skin color. And so I think that in that moment, after that moment of getting out of the car is when the mom made the wrong decision, the mom with the gun. And so I think in that moment, that's when they should have called the police.
So when you say the mom with the gun, real quick, the lady, was there a child in the car?
No, but I've watched 3 different sources, and they've all said that the woman in the black shirt is pregnant.
Okay.
3 different sources have said
Gotcha.
that.
Okay, so that adds another aspect.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the bump. I heard this thing about you bumped the 15-year-old. Why didn't you apologize? Why didn't you apologize? Why didn't you apologize? So let's do a quick around the horn. If your 15-year-old were bumped accidentally or sort of aggressively by an adult going out of a door. And by the way, the fact that she's pregnant tells me that she's probably not trying to bump into anyone.
Yeah.
And so if your child were, hold on, if your child were bumped aggressively, what would you do? And if your child were accidentally bumped, but you had a bad day, what would you do? And when would you stop? Let's start with you, Jayshree.
I would have been annoyed and I would have felt protective, but it's not like that's a 2-year-old who got knocked over and was harmed. I mean, my feeling about it would be like, that person's a jerk. And if they're not going to say sorry, we need to just keep moving, right? Because no one has time to get arrested over this nonsense. No one has time to get into an altercation and get harmed over this nonsense. We just have other things we need to do. And I think that part of what we teach our kids is when you pick your battles, and there's some fights you just don't need to be in, because what is there to be proven and established, right? And so that would be my feeling, and that's exactly what I would be like, Taylor, you need to get over that, and we need to just go do it. We got things to do, girl.
And I like that. It's about, these can be teaching moments. Again, you guys know I go with these analogies and life experiences. My son, who's now 28, once when he was about 9 or 10, we were going through the McDonald's drive-through and ordering fries, just that snack of those wonderful greasy fries. And maybe I was having a day. And when I got the fries, there were no napkins. And I don't know what I said. I probably didn't curse, but I was like, idiot or something. How are you going to eat greasy fries with no napkin? And my son, who was 9 or 10, said, well, Dad, she's doing the best she can. She looks like she's an old woman working at McDonald's, and she's probably just trying to figure it out. And I was like, oh, my goodness. Because that was a lesson I had given him. And he gave it back to me. Mm-hmm. And these types of moments are the very same. Michael, on the bump.
Yeah, so I'm going to preface it by saying that I am, I don't know if you got this about me when I was younger, Kenny, but I am an exceptionally non-confrontational person, like almost to a fault, to the point where Mrs. Malabsky over the last 25 years has become like annoyed with my non-confrontational approach, given the fact that I'm 6'7" and 240. But
I needed to know how tall you are.
Yeah, I was not 240 when Kenny knew me. I was 6'7", 185, but 240. And so, yes, but I am exceptionally non-confrontational, and that's why I'm a pediatrician, because we don't do confrontation. So, and I've been in this exact situation, and I can tell you is that I simply have got, no matter what mood I was in, because I'm usually afraid of most people, is that I guided my child out of the situation, said nothing, and then talked about it in the car or talked about it somewhere else, that, hey, look, you know what, you can't control what other people do or don't do, and it's not your job to direct or to correct other people's behavior. It's your job to do the right thing when you're in that situation. That's it. Yeah. And that's how I have approached it, because I can count at least 5 times in the last couple of years where I've been with one of my adolescent or pre-adolescent children, and I've had a very similar thing. But that's goes along with my non-confrontational.
It may be subconscious, but just like a man of color knows at times to just not go there because people are extra threatened. Mm-hmm. It may subconsciously be that way because you're 6'7" and you know that people are going to get real intimidated real fast.
And what's happened to me at work when I got heated about a patient issue, the response that came back to me, I was shocked because I didn't raise my voice. I didn't jump up and bang the table, but the way people take it when it comes from me, as it was explained to me when I was younger, feels different because of my stature. So I've just learned to manage that by withdrawing from most of those situations so as not to create more of a problem.
Yep.
So Elisa Simmons, who used to beat him down and body slam him at the Wild Wild West with her hands, how do you feel about the bump?
Okay, well, first of all, I didn't say I would whoop people. I said I'm very comfortable with my abilities. So it never got there, Kenny. That's where it never got. So you know what? Because of that, actually, you're right. I as a teenager was very much a right fighter and loved to be a right fighter. I was the bully's bully. Like if you were mean to someone, I would take it. And I'd be like, let's do this. And so, but as around 16 or 17, I started realizing that that was not getting me anywhere. And so as an adult, I am very quick to think about how a situation can go from, as Jay was saying, you going home or you going to jail, and or you going to the hospital. And to me, other than someone's life or physical well-being truly being in danger, I'm not going to jail.
Right.
I'm just not going to do it. Jail's not fun. And so in situations like that, and Kenny, you brought up a really good point. My son is Black. The world's going to.
We lost you again. So I'm going to go to the next question, not question, but next point about this. And if you guys see, I'm kind of rolling through this thing
There we
from,
go.
Yeah, you're back.
I'm rolling through this thing from the least sort of aggravated and involved to the most. So from the bump, let's talk about the man, the male who is driving the car. Let's start with, Elisa, do we have volume with you?
Yes.
Okay, we're back. So let's start with you on this one. How did the man behave? Did he stand his ground? You know why I said that.
Right. Yes.
Because we've seen people
Die because they stood their
die
ground.
because of guys who stalked the child standing his ground.
Yep.
Did this man stand his ground, but without killing someone, while he also had access to a gun, while this woman was telling him she will beat his white ass?
You know what? I would say that I am up until the moment, I think that husband actually responded extremely well, especially given the idea that his wife is pregnant. And I was very proud of him. He wanted the situation to be over. And I think he's probably non-confrontational because he ushers her to the car quietly, puts her in the car. When she's in the car, he says, his words are aggressive because he cusses, but he's not saying it disrespectfully. And now I think when he gets out of the car, he has his gun out, but he's not raising it. I don't think he should have brought his gun out, but so I think for the most part, he handled it pretty well.
I think he protected his pregnant wife. And when this woman was in his face threatening violence, he could see that he wasn't really in harm's way. So he didn't use it as a reason to raise his gun.
Right.
But he was exercising his right. What do you think, Jay?
I agree. I mean, and I think he handled it very well. I think that in light of the fact that I think when a man is in this situation, it is his wife being threatened, but it's also his manhood being challenged because there's a woman in his face telling him what she's going to do to him and his wife. And, I would imagine that most men would feel like they wanted to knock her down, right? But he didn't become that way despite all of that and all of those emotions he must have been feeling. And I feel that it's really unfair to put a man in that position. I think it's awful to have done that.
Yeah. Michael.
I just thought restraint was the word that came to mind when I saw the video. That his whole approach from beginning to him getting in the car to me seemed to resonate with restraint, and that was how it looked to me.
Okay, so thinking about the 15-year-old girl who you can audibly hear her saying, "Hey, these white people, something. These white people are racist. Hey, they pulled a gun on my mom and I." What's going on there? Is she being indoctrinated by, and maybe I go too far and assume, I want to say 15 years of experience, but has she been indoctrinated by her mom's approach to the world and how they navigate life? Or were they threatened in any way that you can see in the video? And were these people showing any signs of racism that you can see? And so what's she learning? What's going on there in that process? Let's go back to the pediatrician.
I think that she's indoctrinated into a really horrendous way of dealing with people and dealing with your emotions. And I think that she's simply just reflecting back the example that she's likely having in front of her at home for 15 years of how to handle a situation when you don't agree or you're upset with somebody. And it seems to me that, once again, since none of us saw the bump, we don't really understand how the context or how that might have lit the fire, since it could have been 100 different ways that we can't see. But if we're trying to connect the dots and extrapolate based on what the part that we do see, I feel like she is constantly doing her best to throw gasoline on the fire and escalate and escalate and escalate the entire time.
Okay.
That's what it seems. You know, and her mother is leading the charge, and that's the example.
Let's stay with the girl, and we'll get to the mother in a second. So, what do you think, Elisa?
You know what? I think that that's how she's been taught. And I think especially when you hear her start yelling out, and once again, Michael's right. We don't know how the bump happened. We don't know if she bumped her and said a derogatory word to her. But and I think when you release videos like this, because this is from their cell phone, when you release videos like this, you're allowing us to come to conclusions. And I think when she starts yelling at this woman, okay, you're racist. And she starts telling the woman in the car, the daughter's yelling, you're racist. And the woman I think that's where, has she not only been indoctrinated into how to treat situations and just get loud about it and be upset, but also is she learning to misuse that extremely important word, you know? And because I'm the first one to call out someone as being racist, but you have to give me some evidence with it before you get to call someone racist. So it would worry me of how she's going to handle all conflict in the future.
Yeah, and I think while it's true we didn't witness the bump, and so just like I'm not a doctor, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm going to use two words. I believe, based on what we saw, a reasonable person watching that video could conclude that we're seeing circumstantial evidence that whatever happened in the bump, no racist derogatory remark was made alongside it, or we would have heard that from this person. What do you think, Jay?
Yeah, I mean, I have to believe that she's been very much indoctrinated. And I mean, I guess all our children are, right? They watch us, and it's not what we're saying, it's what we're doing, and they find themselves emulating us, emulating our attitudes and our approaches. So chances are she's been indoctrinated in 1,000,001 ways. I think that, like, had it been my daughter, I think my daughter would have been mortified, right? That I was getting that loud in the street. I think that she would have very much wanted me to just like calm down and like, Mom, we can go, it's okay. Because I think she would have realized it's just not worth it, right? But I also consider that I don't think either one of them was ever afraid. Because when you're afraid, you are not going to be that loud and belligerent, and especially when someone pulls out a gun. Right. So I don't believe in, and I mean, you think that a 15-year-old, when she saw the gun come out, would have been like, Mom, it's okay. Right.
Yes.
Terrified.
Yes.
But she wasn't. She was real bold, like just wrong and strong. And so that makes me wonder, like, what goes on in that household that even a gun didn't scare any of them.
Yeah. Our kids do emulate us. When my 28-year-old was about 2, I was driving in Durham, North Carolina, and he was in the back seat in his car seat, and a Domino's pizza guy pulled out in front of us and made me slam the brakes. And I thought about the safety of my child, and I had some choice words, blah, 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 blah. And in his car seat, he went, like, he tried to do exactly what I did. Yeah. But he was 2. So
yeah. So it was cute still. It was still cute.
So cute.
Yeah. Michael, did you tackle this one?
Yeah.
Did we start with you on this one?
Yeah, we started with me.
Okay. All right. So let's go to the pregnant woman. Do you think she wanted to fight? Do you think she tried to communicate? Did she try to de-escalate it? Was she afraid at any point? Did she show restraint? And any other thoughts that you may have about her actions, behavior, lack thereof? Jay, you want to start with that one?
Yeah, I think she showed a tremendous amount of restraint. You know, I mean, she didn't call this woman or these women out of their names. She didn't yell. She really wasn't aggressive up until the time that she drew her weapon. But prior to that, she did say sorry. I don't understand what else they wanted from her, because when she had her window rolled down, she's like, you know, I'm sorry. And, you know, I believe that you're important. Your life matters to me. I mean,
Yeah, I care about you.
Right. I care about you. Like, I mean, she was groveling, right? So what was it going to take? I think that I don't think she was really afraid. I think she more didn't want them to think she was racist. I really think that. And I think she wasn't afraid, because I think she knew if she needed to, she was going to defend herself and her baby. And I don't think she was afraid. And I think she could have been a lot more in your face and aggressive, knowing she had a weapon. She could have been, and she wasn't.
Yeah. I agree. Elisa.
Yeah, you know what? I think if you look at, so we have the luxury that the mother and the daughters didn't have. We have the luxury that we get to watch it unfold. And I think for watching that woman's body language, her hands are at her belly. She's standing with her back against a rail. Her husband, they're both in her face. Her husband is just kind of trying to usher her to the car. And I think, Jay, you're right. I think in today's social climate, atmosphere, I think they were going to do everything in their power not to be labeled racist. They were like, nope, we're just going to walk through this. And I think that when she got into the car and she rolled that window down because she'd been triggered, I don't think that was a lack of self-control. I think it was appropriate. I think rolling that window down, she was like, wait a minute, no, I'm not racist, and your life matters to me. I care about you, and I'm sorry. And so I think her moment of inappropriate behavior, which she has to deal with the consequences with now because she's been arrested, is that she got out of the car with a gun during a verbal conversation. And so I think up until that moment, I thought she handled it quite well.
That she was arrested?
She was.
Her and her husband were both arrested, and he lost his job at a college.
Yeah, he was arrested. They were arrested for felony assault.
So, Michael, I guess you can chime in on this. I'll reiterate. You know, did you think she wanted to fight? This is the pregnant woman. Did she escalate? I'm sorry. Did she want to fight? Did she communicate? Did she try to de-escalate? Was she ever afraid at any point? And did she show restraint or anything else you have to say about it?
I mean, I was actually, when I was watching it, I was writing down my initial reactions, because as the first time I saw the video, was that I was super impressed with her body language, the tone of her voice. I admired it at the time. I felt like I wasn't sure that I would have that kind of self-control. And as she quietly stepped into the car and tried to express, you know, sort of non-confrontational and conciliatory ideas. That was my overall impression. And one thing that I was wondering when I was watching this, it was brought to mind that same idea that was on that old Donahue video, is it possible that this was one of those situations that was unfolding in front of two people from very different backgrounds, that each of them was experiencing the same event, but in a total different reality? They were just each having their own reality and response that was uniquely theirs and just not being shared at all. So they were unable to go anywhere with it except in the direction that it went. That's what it seems like to me. You know, Khan did say that a lot of white people tend to transfer their own fears and anxieties about what they're worried about onto what they think Black people will do because of what they would do or what they think and feel. And that the two sides could be experiencing two very different realities about what's actually unfolding.
So I think your commentary speaks to the quality of this group and what we're trying to accomplish, and talk about these things in a real serious way, head on, unapologetically, but with some intellect and some soul and some heart. And I think you're being too kind.
Yes,
I think, you know, by the way, so my Jewish friend from high school, Ethan Garber, was here at my home at the table right there. We were eating some dinner, and I showed him our clip from Sunday. And, you know, he thought it was interesting to see a Jew quote Farrakhan.
I was like, I can't believe I'm doing it myself half the time, but I was so impressed.
They're going to get in trouble. They're going to hear it.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. So, but you're being kind, but I think it speaks to what we're doing, and I hope that it resonates with people, because I will share this with anyone watching. The topic was sent out, but we did not have personal exchanges about our opinions about this. If anyone thinks that we're coming to the same conclusions, because we agreed to do that ahead of time. No one knew what anyone else was going to say. And with that being said, I think it's pretty good evidence of thoughtful people arriving at some place. We don't have a leftist agenda or a right agenda. So I'm happy about that, even though I think you're still being kind about it, Michael, but you're a kind man.
Can I tell a story? Can I tell a story? Because I also
sure.
remember a personal story about this that I wanted to share with you guys, because, you know, Kenny, you remember the Sunny Hill League in Philadelphia?
I played in it after freshman year. Yeah.
Right. So all of us on the Penn squad were kind of coerced. The Sunny Hill League, for those that don't know, is the summer high competitive basketball league that takes place on the campus of Temple University every summer. So every collegiate basketball player in the city, as well as a lot of professionals who come back from overseas, all are playing in this league. And the other part of this league that surprised me as a deer in the headlights white kid whose dad's a dentist and grew up in suburban Washington, was that there was a lot of random dudes that were just came out of the woodwork from all around Philly and ended up on teams. No idea how. They're not playing, they're not in school, but they are just street ballers who, I don't know, they're during the day, they're working their job, and every summer they show up. And I can tell you that when I watched that exchange, I was on the receiving end of identical exchanges multiple times in a McGonigal Hall, meaning I was walking to a game, walking from a game, trying to get to my spot before the game started, brush shoulders with somebody, and people turned on me and wanted to turn this into a racial event and were incredibly aggressive, scared me to death. And it happened to me multiple times. And, you know, describing how I certainly never escalated. I mostly tried to run away, and I was like, sorry. Wait. But what happened to that couple, I was on the receiving end at least a dozen times and always at the Sunny Hill League.
And here's a testament to you, I think, in your character, is that you didn't bury that inside somewhere with a certain perception about black folks in North Philly, because I will tell you, that woman in the video to me seemed like a decent human being. And I'm sorry that her husband lost his job for being put in a terrible situation. I don't think he ever intended to use that gun. He probably thought the visualization of that gun would make them scatter. That's probably what he thought.
Yeah.
And it's a shame that she was arrested, quite frankly.
Both of them. The husband was arrested too.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, that's a bad deal. Did everyone get a chance to talk about that part about her? Did we all go?
Well, you know what? Real quick, I'll add. I do think that when she got out, so you know, at the zoo they tell you not to hit the windows.
Yes.
I think when that lady was banging on her window, I do see a change in her facial expression when she gets out of the car and they've backed up and she gets out. I think in that moment she's like, I'm going to protect my world right now. Because at that moment, her body language goes to not scared, but super strong. Like, this is over. You're not going to hit my car. And I think it had a lot to do with the banging on the windows.
I sensed a little fear at the end when she was at the back of the car with the gun down. I sensed that she was scared to death she was going to have to shoot this woman. That's what I.
Yes, I could see it from that angle. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go to the star of the show. The aggressive mother. How do you think she acted? It's almost a rhetorical question at this point, but did she want to fight? Did she escalate it? And this talking over, asking the same question again, why didn't you apologize? Why didn't you apologize? Repeatedly, like machine gun fire. She did not want an answer.
No.
She did not want to hear what that lady was saying. She was just saying, why didn't you apologize? Why didn't you apologize? Sort of like poking someone in the head. I think she was looking for something to film. I think she's a bad actor. I think in the wake of what's going on now, instead of thinking about the possible positive changes that can come out of this turning point in American history, she was the social looter. She was the person who said, I've got a camera, I'm gonna pick a fight with a white person and call them a racist. That's kind of what it felt like to me, wrapped in super ignorance. Want to start with that one, Jay Cherie? What about this lady?
Well, let me just say this to you. There are two types of Black people that I simply cannot stand, right? And the first type will be the Stacey Dashes, Omarosa Manigos, and who's our Supreme Court Justice, Clarence Thomases of the world. Can't stand them because I feel like they will sell out the race every time, and they will sell out the race for their own benefit if they want to get an audience in front of a certain group of white people. The other type of Black person,
Candace's Hustle, I think.
Exactly. Perfect example.
Mm-hmm.
The other type of Black person that I cannot stand is this woman, what she represented, because she played into every stereotype that scares white people who are afraid of Black people. She played into the stereotype of being belligerent and pugilistic and animalistic and impulsive and violent and disrespectful. Everything about her interaction. She didn't even attempt to be reasonable. I personally think that some of what she wanted to do was put a white person in their place. Because I think that sometimes there are Black people who feel like if they can intimidate a white person, they've had a good day. And I don't think that that's most of us, but I do think that there are a handful of people out there who like that type of confrontation. And if they see that a white person is hesitant and will back down, it's like that sort of bullying where the bully just enjoys seeing you cower. And I think that was what she was wanting to do. And I think that her impulse overrode all good judgment, because if you would put your child in a situation where someone would pull a firearm on your child and you're still talking mess, right? I mean, you're just so immature and ridiculous that it's angering. And I hate that she will end up being an ambassador to our race, because there are going to be people who look at her and say, you see, that's what we're talking about. Those Black people can't get it together. They're so violent.
Yeah, and that's why I said, you just touched on two things I said at the top of the hour. One was that there will be bad actors, and unfortunately, some folks will use that as fodder for their cannons. And two, I talked about airing the dirty laundry, where I'd rather just pull her aside. No, you did it. Great. I'm glad you did it, because like so many places, and when I say in so many situations, you are so much more graceful than I, and you are much more of a wordsmith than I. So I appreciate it. Which one of you guys want to tackle that one next about this lady?
I just want to say that it's like Jayshree read my thoughts, and I can also relate to the dirty laundry sentiments, only because I know that the Jewish community has a very strong, similar idea, and very sensitive to how the world views us and judges us based on the actions of one of our members who does not represent us, but who would be stereotypically just looked at as, see, here's what we're talking, here they go again. And I'll give you, let me tell you, the Jewish community was apoplectic over Andrew Weiner, if you guys remember him and all of his antics. I mean, just the most Jewish face and last name, and just doing what he was doing. Like, we were literally, beside ourselves. Or when members of our community outwardly, horrible financial, and Bernie Madoff, another example of just giving everybody who outside the Jewish community would just say, see, this is what they're like. We all knew it. There's another example. So I relate very deeply to that idea, because we have the exact same sufferings when it comes to the types of people that we don't want representing us.
And that's going to be a show at some point when we talk about this African-American Jewish relationship, which was strong at one point.
Used to be.
Elisa, what do you think?
You know what? I would love to talk to this mom, because I would love for her to go talk to the other mom. And I would love to do that. If y'all want to give me a ticket, we could do a live show. It'd be great. But, and the reason why is because for me, when I first saw the video, was the video I saw was the mom with the gun in the girl's face, and the mother, what we now believe is the more aggressive mom, yelling, "Oh my God, she has a gun!" And her voice to me has changed from the beginning. She's not scared, because she then tells her daughter to go get the license.
Oh, you're gonna shoot me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's the clip I saw. And when I saw that, this is what infuriates me about this this whole thing is the person who wanted to talk to me about this is new to the ideal that he's embracing Black Lives Matter. And he saw the clip of the 1 minute clip, but then he made a choice to go look for a longer clip because he was like, this, why would you, she was in such good gun position. You could tell she had been trained with a gun.
Yeah, you could see that. You could see
could.
that.
And so
Yeah.
he was like, there has to be more. And he was actually the one that brought it to my attention of the longer clip. And so in this moment, because I will fight you to the end if you think that it's okay to be disrespectful to someone based on their race. And so I then have to not backpedal, but I have to then move into my conversation of how both women made poor decisions. And one was making a longer poor decision, but the mom who pulled the gun out has to deal with the consequences of her decision. The other mom though, like, what were you doing? Like, and why would you put this out there? Why would you hold this in your hand and think, I'm going to release this video? Because it made you look bad. And it's just like, you can't do that. And so for me, it's infuriating because now I'm having to go through a person who I'm battling it out for you. And now it's like, oh, never mind. I take it back.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm baffled why she would jump behind the car. Did you guys feel that was an intentional act?
Yeah, I think, she wanted the argument to continue.
Yes.
And this is my thought. The mother that pulled the gun was wrong the second she made a choice to get out of her car with a gun. The mother who chose to get off the sidewalk was wrong. The second she chose to get off of the sidewalk, well, more than that, but the car backing up, she chose to walk to where the car was backing up and get off of the sidewalk. He didn't try to run her over. So,
yeah. And so a lot of people are going to disagree with me. And I get it, and that's okay. I have a hard time, and it's so hard for me to say as a Black man, particularly in this environment, but the environment doesn't change my truth. I own guns, and I hope to God I never have to shoot anybody. But if you're threatening me and my family, and it is clear that it is nothing I can say or do to get you away, getting out of that car with my gun, I just may do it. Not with the intent to shoot you, but to de-escalate this thing. And I just have a hard time condemning that woman for getting out with that car. She was doing everything, for getting out of the car with a gun. She was doing everything she could I think she went above and beyond. Like Jay Cherie said, she didn't call this lady out of her name or any of that. So as a human being, we have different touch points and boiling points. And she'd already been pushed. And now you're banging on the window and she's got a baby in her stomach.
Although
I don't know if I'm going to say
you
she's
stopped
wrong,
her from moving away
we get to
because they were
disagree.
trying to drive away, and you stopped.
Yeah.
You physically stopped that, and
Yeah.
as if she was daring them to run her over.
Right.
It was very aggressive.
And then daring them to shoot her.
Well, the only trouble I have with that, Kenny, and this is coming from a fellow gun owner, is that I've been to several classes, and the one extended course there's a gun range out here run by a bunch of ex-Navy SEALs. The one thing that they kept hammering is that if you are going to take it out of your holster
you're going to use it.
take it out of wherever you're taking it, it's because you feel the need that you're going to have to pull the trigger. Like, they were very much against this idea of, well, I'm gonna show it and it's gonna de-escalate something because that's without a plan. They were saying if that's it should stay where it is. That it only comes out because the situation warrants you using deadly force. So if it comes out, it's because you're intending to use it. There was no middle ground, at least in the courses that I took, about that. And that's the only thing that bothered me.
And I've even said that to people.
Yeah.
If you pull it out, you better be willing to use it.
And there was nothing
I've said
about that
myself,
confrontation. That was like, that woman, they were already in the car. Like, there was no one's life was at stake anymore at that point. Yes, it was all the things you said were true about the behavior, the escalation, The
Sure.
abominable behavior of the woman and her daughter, no question. But there absolutely, I got no sense that there was any life-threatening situation to anybody that would warrant using deadly force to protect yourself.
I mean, there is that. I think we all learned that about guns, right? You don't pull it out if you're not going to use it because it's dangerous to do so, right? Somebody could die, and maybe you didn't intend for that to happen. And this woman and her husband are suffering consequences based on that decision,
Right?
For them make. But like, where's the consequence for this other woman?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I want to know. I think
Well,
that's what I find so viscerally uncomfortable.
Well,
is
you know,
that there's no justice here.
well, it's because at the end of the day, her words were not illegal. And if the only thing they could do is possibly say she was hurting personal property when she was hitting the car, but
she was aggressive.
She was aggressive, but verbally
she was a provocateur. This all wouldn't have gone down that way if she just said, you know what? She could have just called her a name for bumping into her kid, let her go get in her car, or go to inside the Chipotle, whatever was going to happen. But instead, she kept escalating it. There were multiple places she could have just left it alone, and she kept escalating. So she provoked so much of this, and there's no consequence for her.
And again, that's why I called her a social rioter.
Mm-hmm.
You know, pick a number, 1,000 people demonstrating peacefully, and there's one person, or maybe one person in 2,000, and people talk about rioters. I think there are people out here who are aware of what's going on, and I think this woman was like a social looter. She had that phone and that camera, and she was looking for trouble, and I think she got what she wanted. Almost like the person who was bullied as a kid, and they go out and they shoot someone because they want to be famous, right? This woman was actively, in my mind, looking for trouble and filming and believing, just by accusing these people of being racist, that she was going to have this YouTube moment,
get
which
what she got.
did, but it reversed.
Right.
That's
Well,
what
you know what?
If she wants that type of trouble, we can bring her out here to East Texas and take her some places where she'll get some true racism shown to her.
Well,
have all
but
the
the thing,
she like.
but you know what? I think also the danger of her behavior was that this is like when you, Kenny and Jay Cherie, when you say about airing your dirty laundry, at a certain point, this is when the community has to come and say, oh, wait, no, because the people who are against, this is all the ammunition they have to say is like, see, you never know the full story. And it undoes so much because of this one video, and that's where they're going to focus. It doesn't matter that we watch Floyd George get murdered. It's like, but look at this video. And so it's infuriating because she used a social climate right now to try to make herself a victim.
That's right. All right, guys. I think we are probably a little over an hour now. This has been wonderful. It's been great. There are a few topics that I think come out of this. One may be talking about the Jewish African-American relationship that needs to be
I'm so excited
rekindled.
for that one.
One may be talking about, maybe I'll ask my son. He's not really much of a public guy like this, but he's obviously an African-American man who's 5 years into the police force. And a friend here who's a white male who's about 25 years into the police force, and see how they might react to this kind of situation if they were called and what their view is. That's another idea for a show, but we'll keep going. Well, guys, thanks for your time. It's been wonderful.
Guys, have a good week.
Same bat channel, same bat place. Next time.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Good night, guys.
Good night.